Welcome back, everybody. Once again, we are in Barcelona, the Grow Show 2015, and I have to say, this is the one I've been waiting for. This is the one. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to probably separate this because this is a massive subject. I have the privilege of being with Theo from Gavita. Now, I don't even have to give Gavita an introduction. If you don't know about Gavita, get out the hole you've been living in for the last 10 years and start doing some reading. Now, you can have your opinions on lighting, and I'm sure everybody has an opinion on lighting. All you'd have to do is look at the grow rooms that Gavita set up, look at the industry leading professionals, whether it's your tomato growers or your lettuce growers all around the world. You look at the big grows. What's the lighting? It's Gavita. Pleasure to join you, Theo.
Thank you, Stephen.
How have you found the show?
Yeah, it's always an exhilarating show, you know.
It is.
There's a lot of preparation. It's the biggest event for us. It's the biggest European show, of course. I've already been here since Tuesday building up, so I already had a show behind me before the show started already.
I know, it takes a lot of work to build your stand as well. You've got a beautiful stand.
Thank you very much.
If you haven't been to any of these shows before, now you need to get a boot up your backside because it really is worth coming to one. So what we're going to talk about today, lighting. Now, me and Thomas were going to do a podcast on lighting between us, and we actually recorded it, but when we listened back to it, there just wasn't that fine finesse detail. With lighting, there's so many opinions and so many facts and fiction. We wanted to really give it the time, the dedication, and we have absolutely the right man in Theo to talk us through it. So for our listeners, we're going to talk about some of the light bulbs that you can buy and what the difference is.
Yeah.
Could we start with HPS, high pressure
sure.
sodium?
Sure. Now, well, you know, Gavita is a manufacturer. We make all types of lights, but there's a generic science to light, you know. And there's even like a lot of types of lights that we don't sell that have their merits. So I'm not going to discuss our products now. I'm just going to talk about the technology.
Yeah.
We're here to educate. People need to make an educated choice, and they need to know what they're buying and what they're buying it for. So I think there's a few types of lighting that we need to discuss, right? There's HPS. There's obviously the metal halide. There's the LED. Those are the ones that everybody knows probably. But there's also the new ceramic metal halides that are coming up. And of course we have the plasma lighting. It's been on the market already a long time, but people don't actually know what it is and what its merits are. If I forget anything, Stephen, let me know. But I think these are the ones that are generally what the people are interested in, right?
Yes, definitely.
Now let's talk about sodium, high pressure sodium first. Well, you probably know that there's two types of lamps on the market at the moment. There's the single-ended, like the screw-in bulbs. You got those from 250 up to about 1,000. But recently we've seen that there's these double-ended lamps, of course. And people always ask me, so what is an HPS lamp about and what's the difference between a single-ended and a double-ended lamp? Well, HPS is not a new technology. It's an old technology, and it's at the, I think, at the prime of its development. It's a really mature product, and it's very, very efficient. At the moment, the HPS lamp, in general, is the most efficient lamp you can buy. It has an 8++ energy label, and it outputs actually a bit more than the most LED fixtures, but I'll talk about that later. Now, the spectrum of HPS is not always the best spectrum, of course. It's a bit yellowish, orange, there's red in there, but there's very little blue in there, and plants do need that blue as well. But some plants actually thrive under the HPS lamps. So the plants that thrive under this orangey red light, and there's lots of those plants, they do really well under HPS. So HPS is a good general lamp. It's very efficient, and because it's a very mature product, it's very cheap. Now recently we've seen, 5 years ago, we've introduced a double-ended lamp on this market, but it's been on the market already for about 9 years. Philips was the innovator of the double-ended lamp, but now you see that there's more manufacturers of double-ended lamps. They're not all as good, of course, and we've done tests of HPS lamps, and we see there's about a 35 to 40% difference in light output between the different brands. So there's really something to be chosen from. So HPS, very efficient lamp. Spectrum is not always that good, you know, it's not an optimal spectrum, but it's great to grow under. The double-ended lamps, the difference between a normal HPS lamp and a double-ended lamp is two things actually. Basically you see that in a normal screw-in bulb, a mogul socket or any socket that you screw into, you see this wire next to the arc tube, because the arc tube needs to be fed the electricity from two sides. While the screen bulb only has its connections on one side, they've got to bring the electricity to the other side. So we need this wire that goes right next to the arc tube. That gives a shade that takes about 2% of light away from the light. So if you can avoid that, you already get 2% more. That's nice. So a double-ended lamp, which has connections on either side, doesn't have this frame wire anymore. So it already gives you 2%. But now let's go into the arc tube itself. You see that the 1000 watt double-ended, for example, is a very compact arc tube. They made a complete new design specifically for high frequency. I'm going to talk about that a bit later, which makes the lamp more intense and makes it more efficient. Because the lamp is a bit smaller, the arc tube actually that gives the light which is inside the lamp is a bit smaller, and it gives more light, it becomes a little hotter. It doesn't mean that a 1000 watt double-ended will give more heat in general, but because it's a smaller surface, if you got the same heat on a smaller surface, of course it's a little bit warmer. But the heat output of a 1000 watt double-ended lamp is the same as any 1000 watt lamp actually. If you put 1000 watts in a lamp, then it will put out some light and it put out some heat. And it all adds up to 1000 watts. So, but because it's a little bit warmer, this arc tube, the glass, the outer balloon needs to be filled with a nitrogen gas. These double-ended lamps are filled with a nitrogen gas, while the other lamps are vacuum lamps. This nitrogen gas is in there to be able for the arc tube to dissipate their heat a little bit more easy to the outer balloon, so it can cool itself a bit better. But it has a disadvantage as well. The double-ended lamps cannot be air-cooled. If you blow any air over that, you'll cool the lamp down to under its operating temperature, and then you lose a lot of light.
Okay.
I see manufacturers that bring out air-cooled double-ended fixtures who blow directly over the double-ended lamp. I would definitely recommend not to use that, because that's not a good practice, and you use 10 to 20% of light easily.
Okay, so that's a first top tip from Theo, is if you are using double-ended bulbs, please stay away from using air-cooled shades on them, because you're going to lose up to 20%.
Oh yeah, easily.
Okay,
easily.
top tip there.
When you go below the operating temperature of the lamp, then you lose light. Now there's another good tip I would give you. If you're thinking about a light, the 1000 watt might not be your first choice, because you got to think about the distance you got to take to your crop. A 1000 watt double-ended puts out a lot of light. And it brings that out over about 120 degrees, depending on your reflector, of course, but a little bit wider reflector, like our HR96, which is about 120 degrees, gives it a nice spread. But think about it, you need about 90 centimeters distance to your crop. If you come closer, you're going to oversaturate your crop right under the lamp. So 90 centimeters you need. So you need a fairly high grow room or a low crop to actually be able to use this lamp.
Theo, if our listeners, what would they be looking for to see oversaturation of their crop? What would happen to the plant?
Well, you know, oversaturation, you know about bleaching.
Yeah.
You see a lot of bleaching. What I see a lot with people is they put a lot of fence on their crop and they give all this light on it. And suddenly after 7 weeks, they say, you know, it turns autumn and my leaves turn yellow. Well, you know, I don't know if you've ever grown a crop outside, but I've never seen a plant go yellow at autumn. They go purple because of the cold, you know, but they don't go yellow.
Yeah.
It's something that we actually call leaf burn, you know, when you refresh the air over your leaves too much and you get so much intense light and you disturb actually the microclimate around the leaf, it cannot evaporate enough water anymore and it turns yellow. So be careful with how much air you put over it, but also be careful with the intensity. And as for the intensity, you got to trust us or buy a good par meter. We make lighting plans for large users. You know, if you got like 10, 15, 20 lamps, we can make a detailed lighting plan in which we can tell you exactly where to put your lamps to get a good uniformity in the right light levels. But if you take the basic guidelines, for example, a 1000 watt lamp, keep it 90 centimeters away from your crop. And if you cannot use a 1000 watt lamp, you got a really good alternative, which is a 750.
Yeah.
A lot of the 1000 watt users, what they did, they dimmed it down to 750, 825 watts. Because they couldn't handle the intensity of the lamp and they wanted to get close to the lamp. So what we did, we listened to those guys and listen guys, don't buy a 1000 and buy a 750. If you don't have the height, don't buy a 1000. If you only have about 70 centimeters to 60 centimeters to your crop, it's much more efficient and cheaper to buy a 750 watt fixture with a double-ended, that's a Gavita unique lamp, a double-ended 750 watt lamp. You can actually regulate it between 375 and 825. And at 825, it is more efficient than a dimmed 1000 lamp at 825, because any time that you dim a lamp, you'll lose efficiency.
Exactly. That's another top tip. People think that they can throw in a 600 watt bulb and dim it down to 400 or 250 and thinking that they're going to get 250 watts of power. But
Exactly.
a 600 watt bulb is made to run at 600 watts, not at 400 and not at 250. So
Exactly.
if you have to, you can dim the bulbs, but be wary, you will lose efficiency.
Exactly. You know, you always want to run a bulb at its nominal wattage, like 100%, or even boost it. Sometimes lamps even become more efficient when you boost them.
Okay.
But you know, if you don't have to dim them, don't dim them.
Yes, good stuff.
It's only a measure to save your crop. It's very hot. You know, you rather dim your lights a little bit. But for that, I would recommend our master controller, of course, because it does that automatically.
A nice plug there, Theo.
That's for another podcast, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Shall we go to the next lamp?
Yeah, the metal halides.
Metal halide. Yeah, very popular lamp, a wide spectrum. Though it's a bit of a peaky spectrum. If you look at the metal halide lamps, it's not like a full continuous spectrum. You've got all these peaks of all these different substances in the arc tube. But in general, you know, we see it as a white light. The plant does see those peaks. So it does not see it as a full continuous light. There's one big warning I should give you about metal halides. Metal halides, normal metal halides, which do not have a double jacket, should not be used in an open fixture. Metal halides can explode because the pressure in a metal halide arc tube is much higher than a high pressure sodium. They call it high pressure sodium, but the pressure in a high pressure sodium is actually not that high. When a high pressure sodium arc tube breaks, it just breaks. You see this little break and there's a broken arc tube inside your lamp. But the metal halide will explode, which is really dangerous. If you got a power outage, lamp comes on. If you don't have any timeouts on your ballast and they try to ignite it while it's hot, the lamp could explode. That's potentially dangerous. And that's why there are lamps that are shielded, but have a double jacket or a special protection around the arc tube to keep it from, you know, failing the outer bulb, because that brings all kinds of stuff on your crop that you do not want on a food crop.
Definitely not.
So that's my first warning.
Yeah, and that's, again, a top tip. Check wherever you're getting these metal halide bulbs, be very careful that they're double insulated, as this is going to protect you.
Yes, they got to have some sort of rating. Now, every lamp has a rating, and there's an open fixture rating, the /O fixture. Is an ANSI rating which says it's suitable for an open fixture. HPS lamps, though they do not have an open jacket, they never explode. So they're rated for an open fixture. But metal halides in general are not, so do take care about that.
Okay.
The primary disadvantage of metal halides is that they do not have a long light maintenance. Now, the professional HPS lamps that we sell have a light maintenance of about 97%. We always say 96 because we try to underwhelm people. Especially if they try to boost it for the whole period to 150%, it might be like a percentage less. But you know, it's 96% per year, guys. Do not change your lamps within that year. Wait till this year, then change it. I've seen actually people that change their HPS lamps after half a year. I tell you, that lamp has just come to its full efficiency after half a year. It's no use changing it. Wait a year. Metal halides, you can change them every 4 months.
Okay.
Because you lose about, some lamps actually lose 20 to 25% every 3 months of use. 25%, that's an awful lot.
Yeah. So, is this with all HPS single-ended bulbs? You would keep them for up to a year and not change them as regularly? Because some customers, some listeners would actually change their bulbs every 3 months, every 6 months, every 9 months. So I think it might be quite rare for them to keep hold of their bulbs for that long. Is it because they're being, after a certain amount of use, it's actually, they've all been, so to speak, worn in? So then they operate, after a while, they operate at their best capacity? Yeah,
exactly. Some people have to, some people they change their lamps every 3-4 months, and it's just a waste of time and energy and resources. But again, you know, it's not for every lamp. Not every lamp has a light maintenance of 96% per year. So refer to the manufacturer specifications, but also look at your own experiences. What happens with my light? Yeah. It is impossible for somebody to measure the output of a light. You can hold a light meter under it, but what do you measure? You measure the intensity, but not the output of a light. So go with reliable sources, go with reliable manufacturers who give you reliable data. This is the only advice I can give you. But yes, another important thing, HPS lamps always need to run at least 100 hours at 100%. If you don't do that, if you try to dim them immediately, they can actually fail. Okay. Or they cannot even come to the full 100% efficiency. Yeah. So always run them in at least 100 hours at 100%. Excellent. Metal halides on the other end, do not dim them. Don't boost them, don't dim them. They will damage your lamp for sure. And there's another big problem with metal halide lamps. Almost all metal halide lamps are made for low frequency ballasts. And all digital ballasts are high frequency ballasts. Now I know people use with success sometimes the metal halide lamps on a high frequency ballast, but metal halide lamps have never been made for high frequency ballast. So actually it could be actually dangerous to run a metal halide lamp on high frequency ballast if you do not know that this lamp is suitable for your specific ballast. So ask your lamp manufacturer for advice about using metal halides.
Okay, excellent. Now, with the metal halides, I'm sure all of our listeners have heard of metal halides, but there's the new ceramic metal halides. What are they about?
It's a really nice lamp. I love it. It's Philips development. Philips is one of the market leaders in making efficient ceramic metal halide lamps. A ceramic metal halide is nothing else than a metal halide. The only thing is different is the arc tube. The arc tube is made of the same material that we use for making an HPS bulb. It's a ceramic material instead of a glass material, which means it's much more stable and it uses a lot less light. So while a metal halide lamp has maybe a light maintenance over a year of about 65%, a ceramic metal halide has a light maintenance of about 94%. It's not as much as HPS still, but the light maintenance of ceramic metal halide is dramatically better than metal halide. Okay. The second difference is they're much more efficient. The new Philips 315 CDM does about 1.9 micromoles per watt. Micromoles is worth a different subject. Go on the internet and read about it. Yeah?
But 1.9 is very good.
That's good. You know, HPS still does 2.1 micromoles per watt, which is a little bit better. But you know, the spectrum of the metal halide the ceramic metal halide in this case is a lot better. Okay. Obviously, it has more blue in it, so especially for a veg, it's a great lamp. There's one disadvantage: it's only available in 315 watts. Not in 1,000 watts. So any large room you would never outfit with a 315 watt lamp. For example, if I have a 3x6 in which I would use like maybe 10,000 watt lamps, I would need like 35 to 40 of those 315 watt lamps. You're never going to buy like that many fixtures for that space. But for the small grower, for a small vegetative growth, it's a great lamp. I would totally recommend it. We do not carry it, but there are enough manufacturers to carry it. You see, I'm here to give information,
exactly.
Not to promote my brand.
That's why we love you, Theo.
So 350 is a nice lamp. One disadvantage. The advantage of the new ceramic metal halide is that it is a double jacket lamp. So it's suitable for an open fixture. The fixtures are not very cheap, but I think it's worth every penny because it's a good light. It does not emit any UV, which is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is because according to lighting rules, if you're in a public area, you don't want a lot of UV, but your plants actually love UVs. They stimulate terpenes, they stimulate flavonoids, they make a much more tasty crop. Actually, they harden the plant off, they thicken the leaves, you know. So UV, what they get outside, is actually a good thing for a plant. Neither HPS nor metal halide, if it's a good lamp, because it should be shielded for UV, nor a ceramic metal halide, which is a double jacket lamp, emits any UV. Okay. So that's something you got to keep in mind. There are alternatives, but we come to that later.
Well, with 13.8 billion years of evolution, I think plants have got it sussed with what they like in terms of lighting. Now, are there any types of bulbs that replicate sunlight? What's the bulb that replicates the sunlight the best?
Well, it's obvious it's a plasma light. I mean, the plasma light is based on how the sun functions actually. It's a plasma the same as the sun. If you've never seen a plasma light, go online and see how small this lamp is. It's a sort of a tic-tac. And in this small tic-tac, there's the same reaction that you have at the sun. The plasma is formed. It's heated by sort of a microwave driver. It becomes about 6,500 degrees Kelvin, really hot, the same heat as the sun. So you would think that it would be a really hot lamp, but the vortex, that little vortex, is maybe about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters small, you can't even see it. But it emits such an intense light that, and because it's what we call a molecular light, it's not an atomic light, which means, for example, sodium has a specific frequency, it's a yellow light, completely yellow. If you put it under pressure, the spectrum widens. But this light, it works like the sun. It gives a full spectrum because it works on the radiant heat of molecules instead of atoms. So everything from UVC, which we shield actually, to far red is emitted in about the same proportions as the sun.
Okay. Are plasma lights relatively new, or are they an up-and-coming technology? Whereabouts do they fit with all the other light?
The funny thing is, plasma light is not new. Actually, if you use CFL is a plasma light as well, actually. You know, it's a different type of plasma and in a different form, but it's also sort of a plasma technology. Plasma light is not that new. Sulfur plasma has been around for tens of years, But the disadvantage of all those lamps, they had rotating parts in them. They had a large bulb, they were always high power, like 700 to 1000 watt. So you need at least like 2-3 meters distance from your crop to be able to cope with that intensity, which is not very nice. But recently, I think about 6 years ago, Luxim Corporation in the United States, they developed LEP, light emitting plasma, which is a solid state technology. So actually the plasma cell in the emitter does not rotate anymore. And they came with a lamp that's actually like about 270 watts, which is an amount that you can actually take close to your crop at the same height as your HPS. Now you got to bear in mind, plasma is not a magic bullet. The quality is really nice, but the technology costs a lot more than HPS. I'm not saying it is expensive, because in some industries no light is expensive anyway, because you earn it back like in about 4 or 5 months. But so yes, it costs much more initially than the HPS lamp, and it's less efficient than the HPS lamp. If you see how much light I get for a watt of energy, it's less than an HPS lamp. It's about, I think about, you get 2.1 micromoles per watt from an HPS. This does about 1 to 1.1. So it's half as efficient, but the quality is so much better. Now, what we recommend is to use it supplemental to HPS. And for this we made a plasma lamp which does not give you the light. It does not emit, let's say, the spectrum, the colors that the HPS does, because the HPS is best in the oranges and yellows and the reds. So we left it out of the plasma light, but we gave all the light that the HPS does not emit. Right. So it's the perfect complement for the HPS. And the nice thing about the fixture is you can hang it at exactly the same height as your HPS. And with the right lighting plan, you have a perfect mix of HPS and plasma lighting. It will increase the blue light. You'll get the UV for it that you normally get outside with all the benefits. Your plants stay healthier a lot longer, and they're a lot tastier.
So would you say this is the closest that we're getting to replicating our natural conditions outside? The plasma light alongside HPS, this is where we're doing the best at the moment. This is where all the big people are using.
There's always a sort of a balance between quality and quantity. We know that the HPS works really well. The quantity you get under HPS is really, really good. But the quality can be improved. So you kind of tune your spectrum to give it a little bit of both. You want quality on one instance, but quality on the other instance, right? So you got to weight it. Yeah. So if you want to replicate the sun, you should go for the full spectrum plasma, but it will be really expensive. Horticultural customers like Syngenta, Bayer Crop Science, universities, they all buy massive amounts of those plasma lights because they want to replicate the sun. They don't care about the cost, they just want the best light, so they buy plasma. Right, but if you're if you do a commercial crop, you want quality and you want quantity. So you want to combine them. It actually gives you a good return on investment and a really good quality crop.
That's good stuff. Now, to partly finish off, a lighting conversation wouldn't be complete without talking about LEDs.
Yes.
And so, what's your opinion on LEDs?
Now, I love LED. Really, I love LED. If you read my Facebook comments, you probably think I wouldn't, but still, I love LED. The thing is, at this moment, LED is still very, very expensive. If I look at a micromole of HPS light and a micromole of LED light, a micromole of LED light is 4 to 8 times as expensive as a micromole of HPS light. I've seen the tests, I've seen the trials, you know, and if you do the right trials, and not the trials where you have like a few plants in the middle, HPS above it, no reflecting walls and spilling like 50 to 60% of your light, compared to an LED light, which brings all the light to the crop, which is a big advantage of LED, by the way, specifically in small rooms. Yeah, see, I love LED. But at the moment, it is still very, very expensive. And you see that HPS is a really mature product at the moment. It's a stable product, it's great, but LED manufacturers, let's face it, over the last 5 years, you've heard the story from every LED manufacturer that a 250 watt LED UFO could replace like a 600 watt HPS, right?
Yeah.
And we still hear that from some manufacturers. Some, fortunately, you know, they got wise and they know what really comes, but a lot of manufacturers still think that you can save money and save wattage, save energy with LED.
This is my biggest bugbear, is that, well, two things actually. One for the listeners is to, if you're interested in looking at the LEDs, if you see that they claim that the 250 watt LED can outperform a 600 watt HPS, back away quickly, because the marketing, and they'll come over it and they'll be really good, the marketing's probably brilliant, but you know that that's the first sign that you need to be aware of the product.
Yeah,
the good ones don't
you know,
mention it.
Realistically, you need about, if you got an efficient HPS room, you need about the same voltage LED to get the same results.
Okay.
And this is really good actually, because the LEDs actually put out a little less light than the HPS. But because the spectrum is bigger, you have a little bit of advantage. It doesn't give you 50% advantage, but I promise you, if you compare a 1000 watt LED with a 1000 watt good HPS grow, then you'll be able to get the same results. I'm sure of that.
Okay.
But still, you know, compare the price of a 1000 watt LED with a 1000 watt HPS. And the second thing is, you got to be able to find the right, reliable manufacturer. There's so many Chinese shit, excuse my French, around, you know, that it's really not worth it. And if you look at those LEDs after a year, they diminish like 20% in output, while they should last like 30 to 50,000 hours, you know. So be very careful what you buy. Don't go to Alibaba and buy directly. Go to somebody who knows the shit.
Exactly. Do not go to Alibaba and buy the £200 circular LEDs, because if you buy them, then it's your own fault. I have no sympathy for you. Do not buy them. You've been warned by NPK, you've been warned by Theo from Gavita. Stay away from them. But you picked up on another point that I wanted to mention, is that people think that LEDs are energy saving.
Exactly.
And it confused me a little bit.
Oh, can I easily explain that?
Well,
you know, if you're in a household situation where you want light, and you know the frequency of light that we're very sensitive to, our eyes, yes, of course, the LEDs are much more efficient than the CFL and bringing out lumens.
Yeah.
But if you talk about par light, between 400 and 700 nanometers, it's a completely different story. Let me give you an example. I got two plasma lights, right? We got supplemental and full spectrum. They're about the same output in micromoles, about 300 micromoles out of the emitter. But one of the plasma lights has more green in it. It outputs about 20 to 30% more lumens than it does with the other. So the output for a plant is exactly the same, but for us it looks a lot more intense. So what your eyes see, and that's perfect, you know, I can save money by replacing the lamps in my house by LED lights. I'll get the same light, my eyes see the same light, my plants don't. Yeah. So that's something different. And you cannot take those energy savings from an incandescent light, for example, you know. Of course you got huge savings over incandescent. You even have savings over CFLs. But you do not have savings for plant light.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I put one of the LEDs that we're testing in our shop. It's a 600 watt LED, and it says it's a good replacement for the 600 watt HPS. So I put the LED into the wattage meter, and it drew 630 watts. 30 watts of those was for the extraction fans on top. 600 watts was for the different blue, reds, ultraviolets types of light. Now this, it's saying it's a replacement for 600 watt HPS, and it draws 600 watts, which is good, but you're not going to save money. You're not going to save money by using this 600 watt LED, because it draws 600 watts.
Well, what I must say in the for the LEDs, it's a pro and a con. If you have a small room where you only have, like, let's say a square meter, you want a light, and if you're using a reflector that normally brings a lot of light to your walls, you lose a lot of light. LEDs will bring it more onto your crop. So that's great for LEDs. And you see those things normally have like a 90-degree output, right? So all the light gets on the top of your canopy, and it's very efficient in bringing it to your light. But if you're talking about a large room, let's say 5 by 10 meters, you still get all that light just straight on your crop. You do not get horizontal penetration like you get with a more wider reflector, and that's a big advantage of the HPS lights at the moment.
Is the deeper penetration.
Exactly. Now some people say, but I have beds and I have pass. You know, in every modern grow room, you work with rolling tables. You don't have pass anymore. You know, you got just one big surface, because we do not light plants, we light rooms. Yeah. And with LEDs, what they do, they hang those LEDs straight about those rows of plants. In the middle, you got a great light, but take your light meter and go outside. From like 1,000 micromoles, you go to about 400 micromoles on the outside. Uniformity is really, really bad.
Okay. Just before we round up, there's something that bugs me a little bit about indoor lighting, and it's people, intelligent people, and they start to talk about inverse square law and how it can affect plants. And Theo's got a great description of why the inverse square law doesn't really apply to indoor growing. Can you help it?
Well, of course, the inverse square law is a law, and a law applies, but you got to see in which cases it applies and how it applies. People think if you double the distance to your lamp, that you get like a quarter or maybe a fifth or sometimes even a ninth, they say, of the light that you get. That is not true. You do the measurements yourself. First of all, you're not working with a point source because the inverse square law is based on a point source which radiates in all directions. We use a reflector, right? Also, if you look in a large grow room, you got multiple points of light which overlap. What we see generally in lighting in a large room, over double the distance, we lose less than 10% of light. And that's why you see when we calculate a room and put our lighting in there, they're fixed at the ceiling, at about 90 centimeters from the top of the plants when they grow that big. And if I go 90 centimeters deeper, the light levels are only like 8 to 10% lower. You know, and in 3 weeks' time, those plants will be at their optimum height, and they'll get their optimum light.
Yeah.
So, yeah, inverse square law, guys. Don't believe anybody who tells you that you have about half the light at double the distance. It does not apply. If you don't believe it, take out your lux meter, lumens meter, whatever you got, you know, I don't care, and measure how much light you get at double the distance.
Good stuff. Now, we've talked quite a lot about lighting there, and I think our listeners' brains are going to explode soon.
I hope you're not fried, guys. Or maybe you are.
I would love to chat with you again.
Oh, we will.
Catch up at the Coventry and the London show. And what we'll bring is Theo from Gavita, Lighting Part 2. We'll go into a bit more detail on some of the technical aspects of lighting.
And if your clients have any questions, maybe they can send them to you, you know. You can make a little list out of those and answer those questions of your clients.
That would be brilliant. So if you've got any questions, listeners, send them up to NPK Technology, and we'll make sure that next time that we chat with Theo, he can answer them. Okay. So to wrap it up, Theo, thank you very much for joining us on NPK Live. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure our listeners have gained a hell of a lot from listening to your thoughts on lighting.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. See you in Coventry.
See you in Coventry, and if you've got any questions, just mail the guys, you know. We'll answer it next time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
At NPK Technology in Liverpool, we pride ourselves on providing you with the products you need at the right price. Once more, if the products you want aren't in stock, we'll order them in for you. And if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, we'll happily point you in the right direction. NPK Technology Liverpool, going out of our way to help you grow. Visit www.mpktechnology.co.uk.
Life is good.